In the next subsection, we'll look at some tricks to modify a given LP so that it still produces the same value or solves the essentially same problem, but has a different shape. And oftentimes that's the key to making progress on a problem. If all you're doing is modeling a problem and then passing it to a solver, that's not necessary. But we'll see oftentimes we use LPs as part of an algorithm and then want to do something with the output from the LP solver. And there it's helpful to be able to do some modifications to the problems. So we'll still think of this as mostly a tool. But another reason for looking at some of these reformulations is that they are also key to make LP solvers in the first place. And as I said, the goal is not for you to make your own, but I think it's good to have a little bit of an insight how things work. You can always, any tool, as good as it may be, is only as effective as the cleverness with which you apply it. So we'll briefly look at least the conceptual ideas for the more basic algorithm for solving LPs. So first of all, recall this was the general form that we've just discussed. There's n variables, and then you can have constraints of different forms. So I'll always have n variables from now on and m constraints. And so the variables are called xj. The constraints have coefficients for the variables aij. So I is the constraint, it's the ith constraint, and then j is the coefficient in the ith constraint for the jth variable, as you can see in the examples above. And it'll have a right-hand side, which is just a number bi. And also the objective function, all of these have to be linear functions, so they have to look like this. Now, I guess for the objective function or general linear functions, you could have a constant term, but here for these, you could fold it into b, and for the objective function, a constant term doesn't make the problem different, so no reason to allow that here. Okay, as before, I hope this is explained wherever it's used. If set occurs, it's supposed to stand for the objective function, the objective value. The first step is to get rid of all these long sums and use concise linear algebra notation. So for now, that's just an abbreviation. If you've ever done programming in NumPy or MATLAB or any of these tools, they use this all the time, where everything is vectorized. And at least in the olden days, that was the way to get speedups in Python, by using the automatic faster routines that these libraries provided. Nowadays, you still do that, but you also rely on kernels that execute things on a GPU. But even if not, I mean, if you don't care about that part, ignore it. But you'll have to be able to read the matrix vector product notation for so many things in data science as well. I think it's worth getting used to. On the slides, I tried to be diligent to put a boldface variable whenever it's a matrix or a vector, just as a little signal. Remember, this is not actually just a number. I'll stop doing that after these sections, because in general, it's not actually that helpful, but and people don't consistently do it. But for the introductory parts, I was diligent with doing it. Right, so we have the variables, and instead of x1 to xn, I'll write the column vector x, bold x. For the cost function, we have the coefficients. That's another vector, c. They have the same dimensions, but they're both column vectors. So if I want to get back the objective function, I should take the scalar product or dot product. And so I have to take the transpose of the c vector, because then c lies here and x is a vector there. That's how you do dot product, put one, or well, I guess from your perspective, put that on top of the other. as in matrix products, and you get back a number. So you can call this a scalar product if it's vectors, a vector space, or in general, a dot product is the more general algebraic term. That was the easy bit. That's the objective function. Then for the constraints, we can do both. We can fold the scalar product between the coefficient of one constraint and the vector of variables into a vector product. But we can also fold all the constraints in the other dimension into a matrix. So we'll write all the coefficients of all the constraints in one matrix. Here I'm just picking the equal constraints for now. We'll come back to the different types of constraints. So you have one big matrix with all the coefficients. You have one vector of the right-hand sides. And then you can write the constraints as the coefficient matrix times the vector of variables equals the right-hand sides. That's expressing the same as this line where we iterated for I from 1 to p. So you should imagine p copies of that. I noted down the dimensions of these matrices, so that's the assumption that there's p equality constraints, as up here. For the other two types of constraints, we do the same. Just note that when you write some vector lesser equals some other vector, you have to tell me what the lesser equal really means. But it's standard here to mean element-wise comparisons. So a vector is smaller than another vector if it's smaller in every component. It's smaller in the first component and the second and the third and so on. And same for greater equal. That's this standard notation for equal is actually the same. Like a vector is equal to another vector if the first component is equal and the second is equal and so on. Right? It's always an and between the element-wise comparisons. Okay, so that's how we can express the constraints. If we want to talk about a single constraint, you basically have to take a row of the matrix, of the coefficient matrix. And the notation I'm going to use for that is just put a bullet where there's the don't care dimension of the matrix. So I is the ith row, but then the columns, I'm saying take all of them. So you write this as this. So, Python notation would probably be something like A and then I colon. And most languages have some way to say this. So colon instead of the bullet. But this is a bit, in the mathematical notation, this is more standard. And you can do the same for columns. Is that notation clear so far? Okay, so we can very compactly now write our LPs. There's a few other little, really shallow tricks we can do. The one is we don't need maximization and minimization. You can always write a max as min of the negative. You can just negate the cost function and minimize the negated. Or if you want to maximize revenue, you minimize loss. If you have greater equal constraints, you just multiply them with -1 and they turn into a lesser equal constraint. That's also like I'm not going to say elementary school, but high school at best. There's a few more tricky tricks. To get rid of the lesser equal constraints, if you want to, you can introduce a new variable. So it's the same to ask for your variables to satisfy this constraint as these two together. So you introduce a new slack variable, which essentially quantifies how far is this away from the upper bound. And you request that that is not negative. That's the same. So you can move between equality and lesser equal constraints that way. And lastly, we can force all variables to be non-negative variables by splitting up the variable into two parts, essentially the positive and the negative part, and again, forcing both to be positive. It's not enforced that that always one of the two is 0. It turns out you don't need that. But you can replace xj with this difference wherever it occurs, and now get rid of xj. And then all the remaining variables are non-negative. Okay? So you can always eliminate these unconstrained variables. And with these rules, you can get your LPs to have one of those two normal forms. Which one is more convenient depends on the way you look at it. Either you have only less or equal constraints with only non-negative variables, or you have equality constraints with only non-negative variables. In both cases, we'll write A as this matrix m times n, and B is as big as we have constraints, C is as big as the number of variables n for the cost function. But in these two regimes, so if you think about this case, with equalities, you probably want fewer constraints than variables. Whereas here you might have more constraints than variables. Potentially, it's not enforced. On this side, if you have more constraints than variables, then essentially you're constrained to a single point, or it's infeasible. So most of the time here, you'll have a lot of variables, maybe coming from slack variables. Whereas here, you could have a lot more constraints, and you take the intersection of all those half spaces.